So we had just raw text transcriptions for this. And what I wanted to do was figure out a way, could I generate, could I take these transcriptions, could I set them up with some metadata and then get them ingested into OpenSearch so that I could work with it. And that was kind of the challenge. And I plan on using this for several different templates, not just for this OpenSearch lab, but anytime I need some data. Oh, I just need some random data. Okay, cool. Well, let me do this. So I had this as a GitHub template repo, and I will share the link to that. It is an open source repo. We're going to come back to this page. This is actually the first half of the demo that we want to build, is that like every single episode that we have is here on the side. You can click on it, and then it gives you kind of some metadata about it, and it gives you the transcription. And I hope that's the right. Okay, yeah, it's the right one. And I mean, obviously, again, some of this stuff is kind of rough, needs to be cleaned up a little bit, but we'll get there as we get there. But I needed a way to generate this metadata, and I'm using front matter, not the VS Code extension, but front matter on the actual file. But I needed to get this information. I need to figure out what's the URL. I need to figure out what the title is, what was the published date, and then how do I generate this description? Because originally all I had was just the raw transcription itself, and then I had the file name and stuff. So I like building CLI tools. Like that's for me. I was a script kiddie before I got into tech. I learned Python to start automating parts of my job. So I just went back to doing that. And like the first one that I did was I needed to like go through this directory and then just like slugify everything. And then I realized like, hey, I might actually want to use that as a GitHub action for when we add new transcriptions. Make sure everything's slugified in a way that they're accessible on all platforms. The next thing that I had to do was start working on correcting some spelling. You know, my co-host's name is Kathy with a K. For some reason, transcriptions like to do it with a C. So we had that script. Then I had one that was like, all right, we got not this one. So then we want to generate the front matter. And with that, I just used the web scraper. Grab the episode number off of the file name, use Gazpacho, which is a lightweight web scraper built in Python, to go to the website and then grab the metadata from it, because the metadata is probably going to be the most consistent piece instead of trying to actually grab it from the website itself, and grab that information and then output that into format or into front matter, like dump it into front matter and prepin the original document with that front matter. I then realized I made a mistake and I forgot to add I got the naming messed up. So then I needed to fix this. So the thing that was interesting with this is I had these like 4 little scripts that I was writing. And these 4 scripts were like, hey, this is great. If I ever want to use them again in some function, I can't lock them into their own CLI. Like, I don't know if y'all have ever used Typer. Like, the whole point of this is to tell y'all about Typer and a new feature that is in Typer. So Typer was made by Sebastian Ramirez, the person who created Fast API. It's based off of Click, which Click is a CLI tool. Funny enough, it's actually maintained by Pallets, the people who run Flask. Sorry, I'm trying to come over here and copy this URL so that y'all can... Okay, you know what? I'm just going to type it in because... typertangelo.com. Boom. All right. So the thing I like about Typer is normally if I wanted to do something like create a hello world, I would just, y'all can see my VS Code window, right? I'm not bugging. Cool. So if I just wanted to use Typer, you pip install Typer, you can do Typer all. Then from there, you would say from Typer import, I did that backwards. From Typer, import Typer, boom. And then we can generate a Typer app. Thank you, Copilot. We can give that app a command and we'll say hello world, perfectly cool, print hello world. This is great. So now what this is going to do, if I ran typer and this application, let's call it hello.py, why not? So if I wanted to run that application, I'm down here. Sorry, my little window here is like in the way. I also just realized I'm using the wrong camera in my recording. I'm probably not going to keep this recording because it's not great right now. There we go. There we go. Move this camera out the way so I can see what I'm doing. So where's my mouse? There we go. If I come down here, let me clear that really quick. And we're going to say typer. We're in tools. Actually, no, I'm sorry, I'm wrong. Python tools hello.py. I then get the ability to make this its own little CLI. I can go, it's going to yell at me because I didn't do all the stuff. App.run. There we go. There we go. What do you mean you got no attribute run? There we go. All right, so if I run help, it's done most of the work on this. All I had to do is register this as a command. And then from there, it's taking the actual parameters and making them arguments. So I can just run hello. It's going to look and say, hey, I'm looking for name, which is a string. It actually uses those type hints to force a certain type of content here. And I mean, we can run this. We can just say, Python tools. If I do hello, it's going to say, hey, you're missing a name. You don't have a name. But if I do hello and I do J, it's going to say hello, J. Cool. Like, this is normally how I would write a CLI tool. If I'm making a quick CLI, I'm going to do something like this. Typer has the ability to do things like interact with path lib. So if I want to inject like file paths, I can force like, hey, I want this to be a path. I want that path to exist. And I also want it to be a directory. And I can do all of that within Typer. Like, Typer has this ability to extend beyond what we're just doing here. But the one thing I run into with that is, now when I want to run hello as a function, I have to run it through the command line. I can't have some other, function down here that says, or even then I don't even think I can just do like this. Like, that gets a little wild. Like, if I just do exactly. So you start running into these barriers where like you can't set them up as a CLI, but then you also run them as functions on their own. And that was until just recently, where Typer just announced this new feature that allows you to take a function and treat it as if it were a Typer set up and styled function without passing the application to it. So I can do the same thing now, where I can say, like, instead of here, we're just going to get rid of app command hello. We're going to get rid of that. We're going to get rid of that. And we're just going to have this hello here. We're just going to have this basic script here. So now the way that you do that is you would just say typer tools hello. And you see, tools hello run. And you get the same issue that we got before, where it said, hey, I see that there's a function in here. I see that it has hello. I'm just going to assume that that's what you want me to run is hello. And I still get access to all the same tools. If I do --help, you're going to get that information. One of the nice things about Typer as well is Typer tries to look at things like doc strings. I don't know what I just did here. I keep losing my mouse. There we go. Delete that. There we go. So Typer has this nice, capability around, if I add some doc strings here and I'm going to say, sure, print a greeting, that's fine. Let's do that. If I now do that same help file, you get that information inside of your help. If I wanted to do a little bit more, you could do things like type annotations and say like, oh, hello is, or name is the name of the person that you're greeting, and like all this other stuff. If I was using the typer format, I could do those things. What happens if you have multiple functions in a file? I'm glad you asked, because that was going to be the next thing that I was going to share here. So let's say we have goodbye. Yeah, cool. Same thing. So if we run this again, oh, it looks like it just takes whatever the last function that you have given it and uses that as the one that it's going to run by default. Now that's the key, is by default. You don't have to run it like that by default. So what you can do is you can also pass in a function. So if I want to say typer dash dash, and we'll say func, and then we're going to tell it to run hello. And then we do the same thing. Tools, hello, run, and we'll still do that dash dash help. And as you can see, now we're back to printing our greeting. And this is ultimately what I did. And the idea behind, why I'm hoping people will jump on this isn't necessarily to say like, hey, you should always do your CLI commands like this. One of the questions that I gave myself was like, how is this different than using something like sys args-v or argparse or click? And the answer is, sometimes I want to interact with a function like a CLI, but still give it access to other things. I still want to make it accessible, but it's written so that I can interact with it like a CLI. And that's what all of these tools were. They were designed to say like, hey, I want to generate some GitHub action that's like, step one, look, anytime a PR is submitted. Did I disconnect? I'm still seeing messages, so I'm assuming that I didn't disconnect. So it might have just been you. Or Discord's doing something buck wild. Oh, did I? Am I back? Okay, I dropped and came back. My bad. That was wild. I didn't. Sorry about that. Give me a second. Get where I am. Okay, cool. So the thing that I was looking at with like, why would I do this versus using something like argparse or sys? This is gonna be, we're gonna be wrapping up because we try to keep it to an hour, so we're gonna be done in the next like 15. But I will at least share the recording internally. I don't know if I'm gonna share it externally because I ran my mouth a lot. But if I'm using something like sys argparse, or if I'm using something like click, then I have this inability to then try to use it for something else. For this code, I wanted to use it with a GitHub action so that anytime someone submits a PR for a new episode, because we release episodes every other week, I wanted to immediately go in. Like, I don't want them to have to do all the front matter stuff. I just want them to provide the transcription and then go in and just say, cool, run this script, then run this script, then run this script, then run this script. And if I'm using typer for all of that, I then have to say, okay, like run it from the command line instead of just writing a singular function that says, step one, do this, step two, do this, step three, do this, step four, do this, which is going to be a lot easier to troubleshoot than like run Python file, check for errors, run Python file, check for errors, run Python file, check for errors. So it makes it a lot cleaner to interact with. And also, like, I have other projects where I've had to use other tools in the past. There's a tool called dtyper, which kind of takes that function and makes it still accessible to other functions. And this is removing a dependency by saying, you know what, on the other hand, let's not let's just not do the typer thing. Let's just make things as we make them. Um, typer is super dope, and I think the fact it was one of the first things that I saw that really took advantage of using typing annotations. So like from typing dot annotations import. I can never remember what it's called now. Like this is the problem of trying to think of it on the fly. But I can grab options. Definitely look into some of the option stuff because it's going to give you a lot of access to different things that you can do. And like if you want to, it integrates directly with rich. So if you want to have like, very nice rich output printing, if you want to have, it's annotated, it's typing extensions annotated. That's why typing extensions. Yep. So yeah, like with this, we were talking about, that's the wrong file. Copy that. Let's go back into our hello and goodbye here. We could say, here you're typing, instead of name, you say that it is annotated string the name to greet, like that. And then hopefully now if we run this, we get some extra information on that. Actually, that didn't work, which is interesting. Good to know. And again, this is a new feature, so I think some things might still be a little not quite there. Not quite there yet. But what I really like about this is that we're able to now just write Python scripts. And if you're like, you know what, I want to make this, there it is. You can see like defaults and stuff like that. If you just want to go in and be like, I need to make a quick CLI that does this, you don't have to do too much. You just write a Python script and run typer. Or if you know that it's going to be a CLI from now on forevermore, you can then set it up as a typer function. And if we want to see what that looks like down the road, like I have some better examples of what typer looks like actually implemented. I will actually, I can share those really quick for those that might be interested. We've got render engine, source, where's render engine, CLI. Yeah, so here's an example, and maybe I can zoom in here. Maybe. I'm trying to zoom in. It's not working well, but kind of see here. Like before I had to okay, here's a thing that does a thing, and then here's some more stuff, and then here like a bunch of functions before you ever actually get to your first command. And then when you get to that command, you start adding a bunch of arguments and options and saying like, this needs to be this type of thing. And then here's all the metadata that goes along with that so that it's available and easy to look at. And then like you can have multiple commands inside of it. You can have multiple calls to different types of commands. But yeah, there were definitely some instances where like if I wanted to interact with one thing from another thing, I had to like import dtyper and then just let dtyper run in the background. I was like, I don't want to do that. But yeah, so that's kind of it. That's where I'm coming from. I'm gonna stop my recording here.